In this video, I want to explain how iRacing's unrealistic physics actually make it a better training tool, and also how unrealistic physics in other simulators can aid in it being a better training tool for real-world drivers or people just looking to get better at sim racing. Now, make sure to subscribe so you can unsubscribe when I inevitably upset you, and do indeed click the like button, or don't. It doesn't really matter too much. So, iRacing, as you're probably well aware, doesn't have the most realistic of physics. Specifically, the tyres at the moment get stuck over the limit. When you start pushing, drive too hard, the tyres overheat and they get stuck. And basically, you lose all pace and steering and control authority of the vehicle if you start to actually drive on the tyres, as you would in many real-world cars and even many other simulators. Now, this specific behaviour of the tyres and physics in iRacing is actually really quite useful for training a specific awareness of what you're doing as a driver and as a sim racer. And that is that the physics in iRacing massively punish any form of overdriving or trying to induce car behaviour where you would be throwing a car into a corner or pushing a vehicle into a given physics state. iRacing very much encourages you to make the car roll into its physics state, and very much encourages you to underdrive rather than overdrive, and to avoid getting on and over the limit, which requires you to really memorize and learn the exact amount of brake pressure required for every single corner, the exact amount of steering angle required at any given point in time, and for you to really internalize iRacing's physics so that you can really drive preemptively rather than reactively. And the thing is, with other simulators like the original Assetto Corsa, which has much more realistic handling, and most real-world cars, you can actually quite aggressively overdrive a vehicle, and you can unproductively overdrive a vehicle, and there's a lot of areas in which someone could feel like they were driving quickly, but just be wasting energy, putting wear on tyres unnecessarily, just overdriving, which really isn't available to you in iRacing. So by iRacing having this sort of very defined fail condition for that's where the limit is, this is one way that you have to drive, don't go over the limit, let the car roll onto the limit, be as passive and preemptive as a driver as possible, what you end up doing with that, if you can master iRacing, is that you can then internalize that process and apply it to sims like the original Assetto Corsa, maybe like LMU, and real cars, where you learn the iRacing way, but then you also have the freedom to actually overdrive a bit and then take advantage of the characteristics that you have with real cars, where you can actually shuffle them through a corner a bit, or overdrive to get more angle through a corner to then get a better exit. And the sort of more interesting and more dynamic nuance that you have with real vehicles that you just don't have in iRacing. But because you have learnt the passive way of driving and a preemptive way of driving and a very low resistance way of driving, almost like a 1960s Formula car way of driving, because you've had to learn that, and a sheer absurd degree of precision for braking and braking under the limit with no force feedback for where the limit is on braking, and because you've had to learn that with iRacing, you can then find the more freeing aspect of reality and more realistic simulators you'll just find them a lot easier to drive, and you will have benefited from that unrealistic aspect of iRacing. You could make the argument that you could get so stuck in the iRacing way of doing things, and you could see so many training videos, guides and things framed around iRacing where people have not really pointed out this fundamental issue in iRacing's tyre model. You can get a lot of people that don't realise how real cars actually drive, or the fact that you can in other simulators actually push the vehicle into corners more and actively drive a vehicle, more of a Schumacher approach to driving. So a person could, if they could not realise that that's a possibility. So that's a negative aspect of if you'd only played iRacing and learnt the meta of how to drive iRacing. So you could say it's potentially negative, but I would say, given that other sims and real cars are actually more forgiving in many ways, you could unlearn that quite simply, I think. Although I've come across quite a few drivers, real world drivers, that have played a lot of iRacing and find it quite hard when they've jumped into real world vehicles that don't have the same trail braking technique that you would use in iRacing, or require you to actually overdrive those vehicles quite a bit as a way of just driving those vehicles. I've come across multiple people that have found that issue of adapting from iRacing to the real thing, though of course after a few hours or a few weekends they get to grips with it. So but yes, it's really interesting. So I definitely do think, as someone that's struggled with iRacing initially and has now got to what I would say is an okay level, not that good at sim racing, but at a reasonable level at iRacing, I do think the unrealistic aspect of its physics and that cut to what you can and can't do does actually end up being very beneficial as a training tool, for the reasons that I've just stated. It'll be interesting to know what you guys think. I've tried to frame this video in a way that's not as triggering for iRacers that are probably still a little bit deluded. I'm sure it will upset them. I don't think you can avoid it. But yeah, and again, we did another video sort of on a similar topic about enjoying sims with all sims being different. I do think ultimately every single sim has its meta and its character, and I think every sim, if you can learn and understand that specific meta of each racing simulator, it will only really be beneficial, because it will give you more angles to then reflect on a car in real life that you drive, or different things in real life, or even different simulators. It's like if you speak multiple languages, it gives you ways to think about certain things differently, because some languages have different words or words to describe things that just don't exist in other languages. So just learning different sims, I think, is a useful tool. But iRacing is particularly egregious with its tyre model of the current simulators, and particularly narrow in what it allows. So I think it really does highlight the aspect of what it magnifies and what it encourages, or what it magnifies in training, and what it isolates from a training perspective of driving and how you approach driving. So yeah, it'd be interesting to know what you guys think in the comments. Sorry for all these dull videos. I started drinking coffee and it's done some weird stuff to my brain, guys. I need to get back on the tea, and then we'll get back to more silly videos. Although I mean we're talking about sim racing, so it's always a bit silly. Thanks for watching this though. Till the next one, happy tea drinking, take care and goodbye.